I stood in the doorway of the Oak Ridge Country Club holding a $200 bouquet of imported orchids, completely paralyzed. My wife of 10 years wasn't cutting her 40th birthday cake. She was looking down at her ridiculously wealthy ex-boyfriend, who was resting on one knee holding a velvet box. And the worst part, she wasn't pushing him away. She was blushing. Welcome to the worst day of my life. My name is Mark. For a decade, I broke my back to give my wife, Chloe, the life she thought she deserved. I manage a regional logistics company. I make a very good living, but good was never enough for her. Chloe had an appetite for luxury that a middle-class salary could barely feed. For her 40th birthday, she demanded a lavish party. I drained $15,000 from our joint savings to rent the country club, hire a string quartet, and cater a 5-course meal. Her only contribution was a list of demands. Make sure you pick up the white orchids right before the party starts, Mark, she had ordered me that morning, not even looking up from her vanity mirror. I don't want them wilting, and don't be late. My friends will judge us. So like a dutiful, obedient husband, I drove an hour across town in heavy weekend traffic to get her stupid, perfect flowers. I arrived at the club 20 minutes after the guests had settled in. I expected to hear the string quartet playing. I expected to hear the polite clinking of champagne glasses. Instead, as I pushed open the heavy oak double doors, the grand ballroom was dead silent. 80 people were standing in a wide circle. Nobody was eating. Nobody was talking. Some of her friends were just staring, mouths slightly open. At first, I thought they were preparing a surprise toast. But as I pushed my way to the front of the crowd, the reality hit me like a physical punch to the gut. In the center of the room, standing right in front of the expensive ice sculpture I had paid for, was Julian. Julian was Chloe's ex-boyfriend from her 20s. He was a commercial real estate developer worth tens of millions. He was the guy she always told me not to worry about, the one who casually liked her vacation photos on social media. He was wearing a custom navy suit that probably cost more than my truck, and he was down on one knee. Chloe, Julian's voice echoed in the quiet room, dripping with an arrogant confidence that made my stomach turn. We both know you settled. We both know you've been miserable playing house in the suburbs with a working man. It's time to stop pretending. He popped open the black velvet box. Inside was a diamond so massive it caught the light of the chandeliers. It wasn't a ring, it was a diamond tennis necklace, a collar. My heart hammered against my ribs. My hands shook so hard the cellophane on my flowers violently rustled. I waited for her to scream at him. I waited for her to tell him to get the hell out, to look around in panic for me, her husband. Instead, Chloe let out a soft, breathy giggle. She looked down at him, her eyes completely glazed over with greed. She actually reached her manicured hand out to touch the diamonds. Julian, she whispered, loud enough for the dead silent room to hear, you really shouldn't have. What the hell is going on here? My voice boomed, shattering the silence. 80 pairs of eyes snapped toward me. But it was Chloe's reaction that I will never forget. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look ashamed. She slowly turned her head, saw me standing there with her requested orchids, and her face twisted into a look of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Mark, she sighed, rolling her eyes in front of all our friends and family. You're late. You always ruin the moment. I ruin the moment? The words barely made it out of my dry throat. I looked from Chloe to Julian, then out at the 80 guests, our friends, her family. They were all suddenly very interested in their shoes. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. I took a slow step forward. My grip loosened, and the $200 bouquet of white orchids slipped from my hands. They hit the polished hardwood floor with a soft, pathetic thud. I stepped right over them, crushing the petals beneath my boots. Julian casually stood up. He didn't look caught. He didn't look intimidated. He brushed a piece of invisible lint off his custom lapel and flashed a blindingly white, predatory smile. Take it easy, Mark, Julian said. His tone was infuriatingly calm, condescending, like he was speaking to a slow child. It's just a birthday gift. A woman like Chloe deserves nice things. We both know your little logistics job isn't paying for real diamonds. I ignored him. My eyes were locked entirely on my wife, the woman I had vowed to protect, the woman whose credit card debts I had paid, whose lavish lifestyle I had funded by grinding through 60-hour work weeks for a decade. Chloe, I said, my voice dropping dangerously low, tell him to leave, right now, or I will throw him out myself. Chloe crossed her arms. She looked down at the crushed orchids at my feet, and her jaw tightened in disgust. She didn't look like a woman caught in a compromising position. She looked like a queen whose servant had just spilled the wine. Are you serious right now? She snapped, her voice sharp and echoing across the silent ballroom. You're making a scene at my birthday party, a party you were late to, by the way. I was late because you sent me to get your damn flowers, I yelled. I couldn't help it. The sheer suffocating audacity of it broke my restraint. A few guests murmured. Chloe's own mother, sitting at a VIP table near the front, actually looked away, casually sipping her champagne like she was watching a daytime soap opera. It suddenly made sense. They all knew. Don't you dare raise your voice at me, Chloe hissed. Her face was turning red with anger, not shame, anger. Julian is a guest. He brought me a beautiful gift. If your fragile ego can't handle a truly successful man being in the same room as you, maybe you should be the one to leave. I felt the blood physically drain from my face. My ears started to ring. Did my wife just tell me to leave the party that I drained $15,000 from our life savings to pay for? Julian chuckled. It was a deep, mocking sound that made my fists clench so hard my knuckles turned white. He stepped right into my personal space. He smelled like expensive cologne and unearned arrogance. You heard the lady, Mark, Julian sneered, leaning in close. She's tired of pretending. She's been calling me for 6 months, crying about how bored she is in that cheap suburban house, crying about how cheap you are. I'm just here to rescue her from a mediocre life. 6 months. The words hit me like a baseball bat to the ribs. The late nights she claimed she was at the spa, the sudden weekend trips with her girlfriends, the sudden password changes on her phone. It all clicked together in one sickening, devastating instant. I looked at Chloe. I waited for her to deny it. I waited for her to scream that he was lying, to show even a shred of humanity. Instead, she did the unthinkable in front of 80 guests, in front of her family, and right in front of my shattered heart. Chloe turned her back to me. She swept her long blonde hair off the back of her neck, exposing her skin. She looked over her shoulder at Julian with a soft, greedy smile. Put it on me, Jules, she whispered, right there, in front of everyone. Julian stepped around me, unclasped the massive diamond collar, and fastened it around my wife's neck. The sharp click of the necklace clasp echoed through the silent room. It was the sound of a 10-year marriage snapping in half. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't lunge at Julian. I know that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted the middle-class husband to throw a wild punch so he could play the civilized, wealthy victim. Instead, a freezing absolute clarity washed over me. I looked at Chloe. She was tracing the diamonds at her collar with her fingertips, staring at her reflection in the mirrored wall of the ballroom. She looked completely detached from the reality that she had just destroyed a human being. She didn't care about the 10 years we built together. She only cared about the ice around her neck. I turned my back on them. I walked straight past the frozen crowd, stepping up onto the small stage where the string quartet was sitting completely paralyzed. I grabbed the microphone that was set up for my grand birthday toast. The microphone gave a sharp whine of feedback. 80 people flinched. Hey, excuse me, I spoke into the mic. My voice didn't shake. It was eerily, terrifyingly calm. Can I have the attention of the event coordinator and the head bartender? A man in a black vest nervously raised his hand from the back of the room by the kitchen doors. Hi, I'm Mark, I said, projecting my voice so every single snobby friend of hers could hear me. I am the man who signed the $15,000 contract for this venue, the open bar, and the food. I paused. I let that dollar amount hang heavily in the air. The open bar is officially closed, I announced. The 5-course dinner is canceled. Please instruct your staff to pack up the food and begin breaking down the tables. I am terminating my contract early. This party is over. The room erupted into a collective shocked gasp. Chloe whipped around, her hands dropped from her new diamonds. The smug, entitled smirk vanished from her face, instantly replaced by sheer frantic panic. To a woman like Chloe, public image was oxygen, and I was cutting off her air supply. Mark, are you insane? She shrieked, stomping her designer heels as she marched toward the stage. You can't do that. My guests haven't even eaten yet. You are humiliating me. I'm humiliating you. I let out a dry, hollow laugh. You just let your ex-boyfriend collar you like a show dog in front of your own mother, Chloe. I think you handled the humiliation perfectly well on your own. Julian stepped forward, his face turning red. His ego couldn't handle not being in control. Listen to me, pal, he barked, pulling out a sleek black Amex card. You don't get to ruin her night. I'll pay for the damn party. Manager, run this card and keep the drinks flowing. The event manager looked at Julian's card, then looked nervously at me on the stage. I leaned closer to the microphone. The contract is exclusively in my name, Julian, I stated, using the cold, hard logic of my logistics background. Oak Ridge Country Club policy strictly prohibits third-party contract takeovers on the day of an event due to liability and insurance reasons. Isn't that right, manager? The manager nodded apologetically at Julian. I'm sorry, sir. He's right. The contract holder is requesting a shutdown. I have to ask everyone to clear the ballroom. Julian's jaw clenched. The great millionaire was suddenly powerless because of basic corporate paperwork. I looked down at Chloe. She was hyperventilating, looking around at her wealthy friends who were already whispering, grabbing their coats, and heading for the exits to avoid the awkwardness. Gather your things, folks, I said into the mic, my voice steady. Julian's millions can buy him another man's wife, but it can't buy my venue. I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a loud thud. I walked out through the heavy double doors and into the cool evening air. Behind me, the mass exodus had begun. The parking lot was a chaotic circus of luxury cars trying to exit all at once. Women in expensive gowns were avoiding eye contact with me. Men I had barbecued with were quickly looking down at their phones. They were fleeing the sinking ship of my marriage. I reached my truck, unlocked it, and rested my head against the cold steel of the door. I just wanted to breathe. But Chloe wasn't finished. The aggressive, rapid clicking of her designer heels on the asphalt echoed through the lot. I turned around just in time to see her storming toward me, her face flushed with absolute rage. Julian was walking half a step behind her, his hands casually shoved into the pockets of his custom suit. You are a monster, Mark, Chloe screamed. She didn't care who heard her. My mother was crying in the lobby. Do you have any idea what you just did to my reputation? You are incredibly selfish. I stared at her. I actually laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound of a man watching a delusion unravel in real time. Your reputation? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. You wore another man's diamond collar to your own husband's party. I think your reputation is exactly where you put it, Chloe. She scoffed, crossing her arms defensively. The diamonds caught the harsh glare of the parking lot street lamps. Oh, please, grow up, Mark. Julian is successful. He knows how to treat a woman. I'm not going to apologize for finally getting what I deserve. She's right, pal, Julian interjected, stepping in front of her like some kind of heroic knight in a navy suit. You're acting like a child throwing a tantrum. You should have just walked away quietly. Now you've made a mess. My lawyers will be contacting you in the morning. We'll be taking the house. That was the moment I snapped back into pure calculating logistics mode. Your lawyers. I looked Julian dead in the eye. Save your billable hours, Julian. The house is a rental. I never bought it because I've been spending $3,000 a month paying off Chloe's credit card debts. Chloe's jaw dropped. Julian blinked, his smug smile faltering for a fraction of a second. What? Julian muttered, glancing back at Chloe. Oh, she didn't tell you. I smiled coldly. She didn't mention the $40,000 in personal debt, the fact that she hasn't worked a single day in 6 years. Good luck funding that, Jules. Hope your portfolio is as big as your mouth. Chloe's face turned bright red. Shut up, Mark. You don't know what you're talking about. Let's go, Julian. I'm taking my car and we're leaving. She turned and started walking aggressively toward the brand new white Range Rover parked in the VIP section, the Range Rover I had leased for her just 6 months ago. Chloe, I called out. She ignored me, reaching for the driver's side door handle. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my master key fob, and pressed the lock button twice. The SUV's horn honked loudly, locking her out. She yanked the handle. It didn't budge. She spun around, glaring at me with pure venom. Unlock my car, Mark. It's not your car, I stated simply. The lease is strictly in my name. The insurance is in my name. And as of 10 minutes ago, I am no longer financially responsible for you. Are you serious right now? She shrieked, her voice cracking. How am I supposed to get home? I looked at Julian, who was suddenly looking very uncomfortable, standing next to a furious, screaming woman with massive debt. You wanted a millionaire, Chloe, I said, opening the door to my truck. Let him drive you. I climbed into the driver's seat of my truck and started the engine. The heavy rumble of the diesel motor drowned out whatever Chloe was screaming at me. Through the windshield, I watched the reality of the situation finally wash over Julian. The smug, predatory grin was completely gone from his face. He was looking at Chloe not like a prize he had just won, but like a depreciating asset he had just mistakenly purchased. He liked the thrill of stealing another man's wife. He didn't like the reality of a 40-year-old unemployed woman with massive credit card debt and zero assets. I rolled down my window just as Julian grabbed her arm, his voice losing its polished charm. Stop screaming in the parking lot, Chloe. People are staring. Just get in my car. She looked at him, offended by his tone, and then looked back at my truck. For a split second, I saw a flicker of actual fear in her eyes. The safety net was gone. I put the truck in drive, didn't look back, and drove out of the Oak Ridge Country Club. I spent that night in a cheap motel off the highway. It was the best sleep I had gotten in 10 years. The next morning, I didn't text her. I didn't call her. I drove straight to a divorce attorney. Because we rented our home, had no children, and had kept our main credit cards separate, the divorce was brutally fast and highly clinical. I broke the lease on the house, paid the penalty, and moved into a comfortable downtown apartment closer to my logistics company. I boxed up her clothes, her makeup, and her ridiculous designer shoes, and paid a courier service to drop them off at Julian's massive estate. Did they live happily ever after? Not even close. I heard the rumors through the grapevine of our old mutual friends. Julian's ego required a trophy, not a partner. Within 3 months, the fantasy had completely worn off. Chloe's constant demands, her tantrums, and her refusal to work quickly drained his patience. Without me there for him to compete against, she was just an annoying, expensive burden. 6 months after the country club incident, Julian dumped her. He kicked her out of his estate and replaced her with a 25-year-old fitness instructor. I found this out because last Tuesday I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Chloe. She was crying, real ugly tears. She told me she was living in a tiny, cramped studio apartment on the bad side of town. She told me she had to sell the diamond tennis collar just to afford the security deposit, only to find out Julian's jeweler had severely inflated its appraisal value. She begged me to meet her for coffee. She said she realized what she threw away, that Julian was a narcissist and that she missed her rock. I listened to the entire voicemail while sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, drinking a high-quality bourbon. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt absolutely nothing for the woman speaking through my phone speaker. I deleted the voicemail. I blocked the number. I spent a decade working my fingers to the bone to build a castle for a woman who despised the bricks I used. She thought the grass was greener on the other side, only to find out it was fake turf paid for on credit. My name is Mark, and this is the story of how the best day of my life started with me dropping a bouquet of white orchids on a hardwood floor.